Have you noticed that the world seems to be full of two types of people? Those that are always complaining, and those who have found the ability to be thankful for many of the little things in life. I remember reading a story one time about some people that worked at the post office. And a letter showed up, kind of written in shaky handwriting, that was addressed simply to God. And so the postal worker thought, this might need looked at. And so he opened up the envelope, and in it was a very heart-wrenching story. A letter from an older woman who wrote this letter. She said, "Dear God, I'm 86 years old. I live on a fixed income. And this past week, somebody stole my purse. In that purse was $100 that I had put away. Because next week is Easter, and I had planned on inviting over some friends to my house to share that Easter season with them. I was going to cook them a home-cooked meal, give them a place to enjoy the day. But now that my money is gone, so is my dream of bringing joy to these people." Well, the man at the post office that had opened that letter was very deeply touched. And so he took that letter around and he started to show it to some of his co-workers that worked there with him. And as they passed the letter around, different ones said, "I've got a couple of dollars that I can pitch in towards this." And by the time they were all finished, they had collected from the postal workers there $96. The man who had taken the letter originally put the money in that envelope and sealed it back up and just did a return to sender. So it went back to the return address that was there on the envelope. The lady who got the envelope, she opened it up. About a week after Easter, she wrote another letter. The letter again showed up at the post office and again was just simply addressed to God, and everyone who worked there who had helped contribute had gathered around. They couldn't wait to see what this letter said. And they opened the letter, and as they opened the letter, the lady was saying to God, "God, thank you for hearing my prayer. Thank you for sending me the money that was sent. Because of that, I was able to share the joy of Easter with others that needed to know that message. I was able to cook a delightful meal and to spend this day, that may be my last Easter, with some of my dearest friends. And so, God, I wanted to say thank you. But I also wanted to tell you, Lord, when you sent me that $100, there was only 96 in the envelope when it got to me. It was probably those thieves at the post office that stole it." Aren't there people like that? That can see the negative in the beautiful situations of life around us. The ones who would walk outside with you and see the exact same beautiful sunset that you see. And as you're just enjoying the beauty of God's creation, they're looking and making statements like, "Yeah, but it'll probably rain tomorrow." I don't know how it is for you, but I'm going to be honest. Personally, I don't enjoy being around those type people. There are others that have found that in the simple things of life, that there is an ability to live with a sense of thanksgiving, a sense of appreciation, a sense of gratitude. For many years, an old, gray-haired, stooped-back man was seen every Friday night walking down the beaches of the eastern coast of Florida. In his hand was a bucket, and in that bucket was shrimp. Not for himself. No, he would take that stroll down along that beach, often on nights when the weather was a little chilly. No sunbathers or surfers, just a few other folks out for an evening stroll. But he would walk and he would look off at that beautiful sunset. He would listen to the sound of the waves as the waves came rolling in. He would take his weekly pilgrimage, bucket of shrimp in hand, walk out onto this old dilapidated pier. He would never be out there very long when all of a sudden black dots would start to appear in the sky ahead of him as the seagulls would just start to come in for their weekly experience with the old man. He would stand there patiently pulling the shrimp out of his bucket. Putting the shrimp in the air, the seagulls would come. They trusted him enough that they would come and scoop down and take that shrimp right out of his hand. And he would do that until the entire bucket was empty. But even when the food was gone, the seagulls stayed. They would come and would sit on the railing. Some would perch on the brim of his old floppy hat. And after a season of enjoying the birds, the old man would stoop and pick up his bucket and walk back up the beach, back to his home. To most of the people that saw the eccentric old man walking down the beach Friday after Friday after Friday, it was just one more weird old guy. But not to him. For that man is known to many from history books. The man who would walk the beach with the bucket of shrimp was Eddie Rickenbacker, a hero of World War II. And as he walks that beach on Friday nights, many, many nights, he would be reliving a time in his own life in October of 1942. He and his crew had been entrusted with a very important task. They had been asked to deliver a very special, urgent message to Dwight Eisenhower. They got into their P-17, were flying across the Pacific Ocean, when for some reason their navigation equipment was not working right and they got lost. Lost over that ocean, it wasn't long before their fuel ran out. And as their fuel ran out, it became necessary for them to ditch that plane in the wide expanse of that ocean. All 8 of the crew survived. They were able to get into their lifeboat. They had their emergency supplies. But 8 days into their journey at sea, those supplies ran out. No more food. No more water. And at times, for some of them, no more hope. As was his tradition, every afternoon, Eddie Rickenbacker led those people in that life raft in an afternoon time of devotion. And they always ended it with 2 things. One, they ended it with a prayer that God would deliver them. They knew that it would take a miracle, and they would trust for that miracle in their lives. And then they would sing a song of praise, and then often lean back to conserve their strength. Many days after all of their supplies had run out, low on hope, Eddie led the crew as he did in their weekly afternoon ritual. And then, like the others, he leaned back in the boat for some rest and pulled his hat down over his eyes to block that glaring South Pacific sun. As he was laying there resting, all of a sudden he realized that he felt something. He says he doesn't know how he knew exactly what it was, but something instinctively told him that it was a seagull. Now, common sense said it wasn't a seagull. They were hundreds of miles away from the land, and seagulls not only didn't fly that far out into the ocean, but didn't land that close to people. Eddie peeked out under the brim of his hat, and when he did, he realized all the rest of his crew was looking, for they all realized that there on the brim of his hat, if they could catch the bird, was their salvation. Praying for wisdom and guidance, very slowly Eddie slipped his hand up. The bird never flew away. He was able to grab the bird by its feet. Not only were the 8 men able to divide up those little morsels of flesh and get some necessary food in their bellies, but they were able to take the intestines and use those as bait to be able to fish and to catch fish then out of the ocean to continue to preserve their lives. And for the next 30 years, over 1,500 Friday nights in a row, because he had learned what it meant to live with that attitude of gratitude, World War II hero Eddie Rickenbacker would pick up his shrimp. He would walk down the beach, and he would walk out that pier to thank the seagulls. and to thank his God for delivering him in miraculous ways. The reality of life is we all go through times, some of them pleasant, some of them unpleasant. The choice still remains ours, which we will focus on. Whether we will become old, bitter, critical, complaining individuals, or whether we'll learn to walk through the rhythms of life with our buckets of shrimp, with our ability to say thank you to the seagulls in our lives, to be able to look at the past, to be able to live in the present, to be able to face the future with the hope that comes from living that attitude of gratitude.